My name is Ellie. I'm a 20-year-old college student, and I'm going into my third year. Before the summer break is over, Faye, Victoria, Angie, and myself are going to Angie's parents' cabin to spend a girls' weekend of relaxation by the lake before going back to school. I begged my dad to let us take his Jeep, and he said yes on the condition it comes back in the exact condition I drove it in. Easy enough. We're not crazy off-roaders. I drove with the roof off, and all of us girls took in the smell of mountain and lake air. How much longer? Faye asked from the back seat. We should be there in about 5 minutes, Angie said patiently from the passenger seat. I'm starving, Victoria whined. I tossed my half-eaten can of Pringles back to her, and she thanked me with a smile. True to Angie's word, we were pulling up within minutes. We all got out and grabbed bags of food in our suitcases. We stepped inside the cabin and gasped as we looked around. It was gorgeous and massive. I get the master bedroom. You three can fight over which ones have to share a room, and a lucky one to have the other guest room to yourself, Angie said as she dragged her suitcase up the stairs. Rock, paper, scissors? Faye suggested. Best 2 out of 3, Victoria said as she balled a fist against the palm of her other hand. I won the guest room to myself, and Victoria and Faye wound up having to share. That night, I would never want to stay alone in a room at that cabin ever again. We got ourselves some lunch and went out to the deck to sunbathe. We got in the water and splashed around for a bit before heading back in to make some dinner and do skincare night and binge junk food while we watched chick flicks. Angie insisted we started with Mean Girls. As we watched the movie, the scene where Lindsay Lohan burst through the door on her friends while they were watching a scary movie and they screamed. When we heard a scream outside. Did you guys hear that? I asked. Angie paused the movie. We thought maybe we had too much caffeine from our sodas and were hearing things when nothing else sounded. I had the popcorn bowl in my hands when suddenly there was a pounding on the door. I jumped so hard, popcorn flew everywhere. Angie and Victoria went to the door together to look outside. There wasn't anyone there. The rest of the movies went on without incident, as did the next 2 movies we watched. By the time the third movie was over, we had forgotten all about it for the most part, and we all dragged ourselves upstairs to bed. We all brushed our teeth in the bathroom, and I went off to enjoy a plush, queen-sized bed to myself. I opened the window a crack to let some of that fresh mountain air in while I slept. But that would be a mistake. I played a game on my phone while I settled down before my eyes got tired and I dozed off. I jumped awake a bit later at the sound of something hitting my window. I got up to see what could have hit it from that high up. The window was cracked, and as I approached it, a large rock hit it, causing it to crack a little more. I looked out the window, and down below my window was a man. He looked up at me with an unnaturally wide smile on his face. He then ran up to the side of the building and began to climb up the ladder used as a fire escape. I screamed and slammed the window shut and locked it. I ran and barged into the master bedroom. Angie, there's a man outside! Angie shot up with her sleep mask on and lifted it. What? She said groggily. A man is climbing up the fire escape ladder. We need to call the police, I shouted. We then heard Victoria and Faye screaming from the other room, followed by the sound of tearing flesh, and their screams turned into gurgling, as though someone ripped their throats out. Oh, God! I cried as Angie rushed to the door to lock it. Stay calm, Ellie, she said as she grabbed her phone and dialed the police. We need the police here, quick! There's a man inside the cabin, and I think he's already killed 2 of my friends. She gave them the address just as the man started kicking the door with brute force. He kicked it right off his hinges, and he stood there staring at us with blood all over his mouth and hands. The man's eyes were wide and red as he held up his index finger and dragged it across his throat in a slashing motion and let out the most disturbing laugh I have ever heard. He moved closer to us, and we backed up until our backs hit the glass doors that led to the balcony. Angie fumbled with the lock. She got it undone, and before we could think better of it, both of us ran out onto the balcony and jumped off. We were only about a story high, so the fall wasn't fatal, but high enough to knock the wind out of us. The adrenaline rush allowed us to get up and run for the Jeep. Thankfully, I had left the keys in the ignition as we were out in the wilderness. Angie and I climbed in. I started it up and peeled out of there. The bloodthirsty man chased us down, but we lost him after a bit. The police arrived and found the man passed out in the bushes down the road. Victoria and Faye were found with their throats ripped out. They also found a couple that were camping under the stars he had murdered that night. That explained the screams we heard, and the girl ran to our cabin and pounded on the door. The man took her before we could answer. After some testing, they found out that the man was on an acid trip that caused him to hallucinate. What he thought he saw in me or my poor friends that he slaughtered, we will never know. Angie and I stayed friends, and we never went camping again.